Well, greetings, fellow dwarfers. Welcome to a very different and very special episode today. I have a guest on the episode today, which is going to be something quite different and quite fun. This is a new series I'm hoping will take off and I can get a few faces on, but nobody answers my emails and nobody likes me. Lonely. I'm Mr. Lonely. So today we have on Cappsy from the wonderful website Ganymede Titan. This website's been going for ages, super well known, super popular in the world of Red Dwarf. So Cappsy, welcome aboard.
Thank you very much, Dan.
So, give us 3 facts about yourself that someone might not know. I didn't warn you about that bit.
Oh, you didn't. Drop straight in the deep end. But do they have to be Red Dwarf related?
No.
Okay, all right, cool. My grandma's cousin is Alethea Charlton, who was in the very first Doctor Who story. She played her in
Great fact. That's cool.
That's one. I can solve a 3x3 Rubik's Cube in under 30 seconds.
That's very impressive.
Isn't it? Well, yeah. Not in the wider scheme of things. Third one. Let me think. No. Oh, God. It's all going out of my head.
I put you on the spot without... No problem.
Yeah.
To be honest, I'm quite impressed with the Rubik's Cube thing, even if it is a small Rubik's Cube, because I cannot do 3D puzzles at all. My wife's laughed at me before where I've had those wooden ones that you put together and literally it's crumbled in my hands and then she's watched my soul crumble from my face at the same time and the thing nearly go through the window. I hate them. So, this bit I did warn you about. We're going to do some quick fire questions, put you on the spot a bit. You've got to answer, I'll give you, it's multiple choice, but it's only be a choice of 2. Multiple choice questions, quick fire, just to let people get to know you a bit more. So, here we go. Answer as quick as you can. Would you rather be stuck in a lift with Rimmer or with Lister?
Rimmer, better kind of nasal situation going on there, for sure.
Starbug or Blue Midget?
Starbug.
Who's cuter, the Scutters or Mr. Flibble?
The Scutters, Mr. Flibble's terrifying, obviously.
Fair enough. Would you rather have a vial of luck virus or sexual magnetism?
Luck, because I think luck I could probably use that for the very purposes as well.
Personally, I think surely the luck virus is going to help you pull anyway, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Leather jacket or JMC khaki shirt?
JMC khaki, yeah. I'm not a leather guy.
Would you rather be resurrected as a soft light hologram or as a Holly, as a ship's computer?
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, so you can't touch things if you're the soft light. But if you're the ship's computer, you get full control of the ship, but you can't walk around and be like a normal person.
Yeah. I think I go soft light hologram because there is a certain amount of things I could touch that are also generated as soft light. For example, a soft light triple fried egg chili sauce and chutney sandwich. So.
Well, that's just as well you said that, because one of my questions is Shami Kebab Diablo or triple fried egg chili chutney sandwich?
Are you going to make me choose between... Probably a Shami Kebab Diablo, to be honest. It looks amazing.
Brilliant. Pot noodle or chicken vindaloo?
Chicken vindaloo.
Right. Hattie or Norman?
I love Hattie to bits. It has to be Hattie.
Fair deal. You can only take 1 DVD on a desert island. Do you take the Smeg-Ups collection or Series 8?
Smeg-Ups. 100%. Cool. I love the Smeg-Ups.
Backwards or Last Human?
Backwards, 100%.
Yeah, cool. That's it.
Yeah.
Nice and easy questions. Nothing too much to trip you up there. Although,
nice warmed up. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know if I might trip you up a little bit with like the Hattie or Norman, but you had a definite answer straight away, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's funny Hattie and Norman because, I don't know, all these years I've been watching Red Dwarf, I've been part of the community. Like opinions kind of change on actors, and it starts to get away from the show itself and your personal opinions of the people. And Norman's always been seen as like the best Holly in series 1 and 2 because he was so good and they used him right. Hattie was never used very well or to her full potential, and so she suffers from that. However, her performance is so good and she is such a lovely person, whereas Norman has been controversial in the past. So you go back and forth, but I think on balance Hattie's just great.
Yeah, and I think there's an element of people, maybe it's an overexposure thing. Hattie was in more episodes, so it's not as special as when you see Norman, who's only in 2 seasons. But you also get the thing of people just seem to forget. I mean, and your Pearl poll on the website is a great example. top episode every time. It's a Hattie episode.
Yeah.
You know, back to reality.
And she's very... Yeah, she's got plenty to do in it as well.
People don't often take into consideration the episode. It's just the individual performance. But I think in terms of the episode, she's in the best episodes.
Oh, you should just keep an eye on in the background as well. Be like, watch how much work Hattie does when she's not got anything to say, which is a lot of the time in Series 5. In the background, she's just reacting to like what people are saying, rolling her eyes, and like she's great. She's always on, you know.
Brilliant. We've got off on a wonderful tangent there, considering we're not talking about Series 5 and we're not talking about Back to Reality. That's a great start. But today we're talking about the episode, your favourite episode, you told me, which is, of course, I've gone blank.
Out of Time.
Out of Time.
because I'm a hipster.
Start. Sorry?
Because I'm a hipster, you know. Like, it'd be boring to say Back to Reality. Well,
why is that a hipster episode?
It just feels hipstery to me. Like it's there's so much like weird about it, and it's so different. It's just I don't know. It feels a bit like, you know, oh well, you know, my favourite stuff is always the early stuff, or like, you know, the obscure stuff. I don't know.
I know. I'd have said the hipster answer is to say something that nobody likes,
like Meltdown, maybe. Like
I have a soft spot for hipster. I do have a soft spot for Meltdown.
So do I, but like, is that the ultimate hipster, or is something
Pete
like
Part 2 is
Pete Part 2?
If we're gonna go off the pole, it's Pete Part 2 for the last 20 years.
You're mentioning the surveys, and that there was one submission I remember from, like, I think it might be the Silver Survey, so this was now 10 years ago, where someone just put everything in reverse broadcast order and submitted that. It's like some Pete, like, so you know, only the good at the top, and then, you know, Cry TV and Pete Part 2 and everything was way too high, so we discounted that submission.
Yeah, I mean, I have mixed feelings, if I'm honest, because I came into Red Dwarf. It was always there in the 90s. Growing up as a kid in the 90s, it was always there in the background. But the first series I properly sat down and watched, like, episode 1 to episode 8 was Series 8. So I have a soft spot for it.
Yeah. Yeah, you can't replace that, can you? That first experience.
I mean, it wasn't a first experience. I mean, I did watch, like, all of Series 7, but not as, like, a dedicated, we're going to watch this week in, week out.
The formative one, I guess, then, yeah.
Yeah, so I have a soft spot for it, but going back, yeah, it's hard to love it in anywhere near the same way as all the others.
Well, that's the dirty secret, isn't it, really, is that everyone is so driven by nostalgia when it comes to Red Dwarf. I'm sure we'll get onto this because we're talking about the very last episode of what we call the bubble, the BBC bubble, of 36. Some may say perfect episodes, or like as perfect as you're going to get.
Yeah.
But a lot of it's down to like, oh, well, yeah, but I was watching that, you know, on a Friday night after school, and originally, and that's where a lot of the nostalgia comes from, and a lot of the good feelings. Also, though, they are, you know, usually brilliant episodes.
Oh, bangers, yeah, absolutely brilliant. I mean, personally, I would probably lean towards Queeg, but it's going to depend. If you catch me in a mood where I want something with lots of action, it's going to be, I don't know, White Hole or something. But if you catch me in a mood where I just want a great joke, the ending joke of it being, you know, an April Fool's thing, Queeg's always been hard to beat for me.
You can't beat an episode with good, solid character stuff as well. Queeg's just full of that.
Oh, totally. Yeah. Right, let's get on to your episode, Out of Time.
What was it again? Oh, yeah, Out of Time.
Out of Time, which I have come prepared for, with a full box of Cadbury's fingers. Except I'm not allowed to open them because it would be a waste and I've got to keep them for Christmas. Because we're filming this in mid-December, so I'm not allowed to open them. It would be a waste, apparently.
Okay, that's just for a prop then. That's just
it's a prop, but they're in there, which is just cruel. Totally cruel.
I love chocolate fingers.
Right, so Out of Time. When did you first watch this one?
Well, this is an interesting one. So I think the first time I saw this would have been on the famous 1994 repeat run. So after Series 6 finished, the BBC ran through and did a full repeat of everything, which I think might have been the first time Series 1 was repeated as well, like 6 years after it was originally broadcast. But this is a jumping on point for a lot of people around about my age. I had watched some Red Dwarf on broadcast, but I didn't really remember before. But I remember watching the repeat run of 6, and unbeknownst to me, they didn't show sirens.
Right, that's
because
weird.
of an ongoing court case with Craig Charles that was since dismissed. it was a bit inappropriate, apparently, to show sirens. So it started with Legion. So I was like, okay, Legion's episode 1. Government of the Apocalypse is episode 2.
In fairness, I could see how Legion would feel like a first episode.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
like,
Legion's a great
and
first.
Stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So, like, I was going through, I would have been 11 going through, and then Out of Time comes on. I'm like, this is episode 5. I watch it, and it's amazing. It's dramatic. And then you got the big cliffhanger. I was like, can't wait till next week.
Oh, yeah, I can see that's cruel.
Yeah, and then it didn't come on, and I was like, no internet, obviously. Like, why isn't it on? And it never came until I later realised that I'd missed an episode, and that was it at the time. That was it.
You see, and coming back to myself, my first introduction of watching week in, week out was Series 8, which also ends on a bit of a cliffhanger, and then you're left for like 10 years.
Yes, exactly. That's a worse
Yeah.
way. It was only 3 years. And
then your next one's Back to Earth, which answers nothing.
I love that, though. I could talk about Back to Earth quite well. I love the fact that Doug just said 9 years later and then went, nah.
I think we should talk about Back to Earth in another episode, because I have opinions on it in the opposite direction.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm all over the place with it. I really am. But
the fan service I love. You know what it is?
So funny.
I'm jumping ahead to when we're talking about it, but I just don't like Blade Runner very much, which screws up the whole thing. If you're not a Blade Runner fan, it's really hard to enjoy Back to Earth.
I mean, also, and like coming from the point of view of like being in a group of fans that have been in and around the show for so long, we never knew that Blade Runner was any sort of influence. We've always been told Dark Star, Alien.
The Dark Star, Alien, yeah.
Yeah, not Blade Runner. Like, where the hell did Blade Runner? Anyway.
Tangent. Right, Out of Time. Beautiful. It's going beautifully. Out of Time. So you first watched that on the repeat run, which is probably where actually I was watching stuff in the 90s. Probably wasn't aware that it was a repeat run.
It's because it would have been consistently on every week. You couldn't have missed it, and it was easy for people to get into a flow watching it. Yeah. So
you were first watching that in the 90s, and you had a disappointing end where you thought there was more to come. So why would you now say it's a top episode? Your top episode?
I've been thinking about this. I think that I love Red Dwarf for all of its good and bad points, and I think that Out of Time is almost like the distillation of Red Dwarf. It's like a full stop on what is kind of what I would consider my Red Dwarf. Mm-hmm. Like, literally, it's the last episode, but it's like the culmination of 6 years of character work, like, just basically coming to fruition. It's dramatic. It's also claustrophobic, close-knit, and it's also, production-wise, a complete shambles, a complete mess. And these are all things that Red Dwarf has had as part of its DNA forever, and this episode has it all. Like, the famous story is that Rob and Doug barely had a script when they started rehearsing, and when they were filming on the night, they had auto cues everywhere where they were still writing the script and editing it as the actors were about to go into a take. So you get a lot of actors, like, that's why they're in Starbuck all the time. They're all looking at monitors. Everyone's reading the script.
Yeah, that comes together, yeah.
And you don't really notice it, and then you just think, God, what an absolute mess! Like, how did Rob and Doug get away with being able to do that? But also, how do you get such an amazing episode from that chaos? Like, it's just pure Red Dwarf to me.
I think it's a great example of a cast at the top of their game,
100%.
who totally know the characters. So when you say, read this line that you've never practiced before, they can read it. They're not reading it as Chris Barry. He is reading it as Rimmer.
Yeah. They're all inhabiting the characters at that point. That's why I say it feels like a culmination of a lot of things. Things were starting to fall apart at the seams, obviously. Rob and Doug were probably pretty much ready to never see each other ever again. Chris Barry was on the way out. Craig Charles had his personal problems. It's like everything was like in a parallel universe. It could have very, very easily been the last ever episode. But
absolutely, yeah.
Those performances and the drama that they did in the ending, it's just it's exciting, and it's like it made me feel like it was maybe the first time as a kid that I had like a gut punch of drama while watching a show, watching a sitcom that I liked.
I think there's elements of that clashing and fighting and striving. I think there's elements of that in the story as well, isn't there? Really, because they're striving against their future selves, and I think you can see some of that, like just like the way when Craig comes down the stairs with a bazooka and just tells them to git.
Yeah,
there's so much strength in that. He says it quite passionately, really.
Oh, yeah.
And you just wonder if the real life stuff influences the performance. It must do, surely.
Oh yeah, sure. I mean, and the performances that they put in of their older selves are terrifying, because it's like, it's hard to describe. It's like if you were faced, like Red Dwarf's done being faced with yourself quite a lot.
Yeah.
But when you're faced with yourself and yourself is a dick. I mean, sorry. When you're faced with yourself and they're familiar but horrible. It's like a twisted nightmare. It's like it's hard to describe. It's so much more uncomfortable than just some simulants.
There's something familiar and unfamiliar in it. In that, I think there's something familiar in us looking back and thinking, "Oh gosh, 17-year-old Daniel was a knob." I think a lot of us are quite familiar with looking back at ourselves as like a teenager or whatever and thinking, "What a twit he was." There's a familiarity in that. But this is subverted, where instead of working towards being a better person, they've worked towards getting worse and worse and worse. So there's that.
Do you know what?
Brilliant...
I think it's had a big impact on me, because one of my main things that I strive to do is the old idiom of it's funny how you get more right wing as you get older, or you start to lose your principles and stuff like that. And like I'm terrified of that. I'm every day fighting against that sort of perceived kind of thing of what happens when you get older. Like, are you just going to turn into this selfish, like cynical person, or are you going to try and keep some of your youthful
it happened to me at 25.
What was that, a couple of weeks ago?
No, I shaved this hair. It didn't fall out on its own, honestly.
Maybe I'm getting a bit deep there, but like, I mean, when Red Dwarf has been part of my life for like as long as I can remember. And so I've looked at it in every possible way, and I do think that it shaped me a lot.
I think Red Dwarf gets a lot of credit for doing quite hardcore sci-fi ideas in a comedy show, but what it doesn't get enough credit for is quite hardcore psychological ideas,
100%.
Which we know, like Rob had a background in that, studying psychology for some time. Yeah. So I think it doesn't get enough credit for the psychological aspect. Like Me Squared is probably the most obvious example, but even here, as you say, meeting your future self and disliking them greatly is fascinating.
Yeah, not only just disliking them because they annoy you, like in Me Squared, it's like you've got a Rimmer that hasn't got the few months of character development that our Rimmer has with Lister, so he's a bit harsher and he's just a dick. Whatever. These guys are like, having dinner with the Hitlers, playing tennis with the Goerings. Like, they are terrible people. Like, genuinely, like, they've lost all of their principles and morals. And again, that being their characters is like, for Lister, that's scarier than being a brain in a jar. Because he's the most principled and most...
Which is weird, because you'd think there's almost by now, Red Dwarf, you could have said, we've seen this before, back to reality, they meet a version of... They wake up to be a version of themselves they hate. But this is done it in such a different way. You don't get that comparison made, and you don't get people saying, we've seen this before.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. It's quite a fresh concept, and you're right, you can feel Rob Grant all over this episode. Yeah. Mainly because, and I'm thinking of the novel backwards as well, is that he really feels like the one that resonates most with me when he digs into a character, especially Rimmer. Like, he's great with Rimmer. And the character stuff he does with Rimmer through the novel backwards is fantastic. And he, like, whenever you're kind of almost getting character-based cosmic horror, Rob Grant's the one behind the keyboard on that one,
I mean, it's always been said, rumoured, hearsay. It's always been that Rob Grant hated time travel because hates the time travel concept. Messes up with things, and it's an easy way out for sci-fi. So you could sort of almost see it as the two writers okay, the conversations and the psychology is Rob. The ending with the time travel is Doug. You could almost see it that way.
Almost, yeah, but at the same time, I think they're totally sending up time travel. Like,
oh, of course.
The joke of them going back in time to the 15th century, but they're still in deep space, is just perfect. It's like that is again, that's Red Dwarf distilled. It's like this common, well-worn sci-fi idea, but immediately Red Dwarf's taking its knees away. And
it's the Doctor Who's anywhere in space and time. Why does travelling in time move me? Which is actually something, to its credit, that Back to the Future did very, very well.
Oh, yeah.
Which I think is why Back to the Future is still so strong 30-odd years later.
Yeah, the thing with Back to... Like, no time travel story is going to be watertight, ever.
Oh, no, of course not.
What's really important is as long as you've got enough sleight of hand going. Like, Back to the Future manages the sleight of hand by just being one of the best stories put to film. And, you can think about grandfather paradox, bootstrap paradoxes, whatever. Like, they're not possible. They're not going to make sense or anything like that, but it doesn't matter because it's consistent, internally consistent. And internal consistency, to be honest, is something that gets thrown out in the next episode. It gets a little bit.
Yeah. Well, one of my questions was going to be, what do you think of the follow-up in Tikka to Ride, where we get the monologue opening, almost like selfie cam 20 years early, isn't it? With Craig walking around talking about vlogging. Yeah, what's happened. And it's just, how's it said? It's something like, we're in an unstable reality, and it just moves on, basically. Starbug's a bit bigger for no apparent reason. We're in an unstable reality. Move on.
It's a decent... I think it's a decent resolution in principle. Like, it caused this weird loop that was so confusing and impossible that everything just kind of blipped back. That's cool. I like that. That's quite Red Dwarf. It's like the scrolling text at the start of Backwards. It's not spending too much energy, but it's doing enough to feel solid. The problem is that it completely gets away from them after that. Like, the expanded Starbug is like, they may as well have just said on screen, Doug wants to make a film, and so he's stuck on Starbug, so we have to make it bigger for production reasons. And it's like that just clangs pretty badly. And then the fact that the time machine all of a sudden moves them wherever they want to go. Like, the whole plot of Out of Time is, well, a big important part of it is centered around the fact they can't move anywhere, and then all of a sudden they can move somewhere. Like, and again, maybe that's explained by the weird time paradox or something. But watching Tikka to Ride is such a weird experience, because I did watch that on broadcast, I remember very clearly, and it just felt uncanny almost. Like, it was Red Dwarf, but it wasn't like any Red Dwarf I'd ever seen. And
as a piece of comedy drama, I really like Tikka to Ride.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great concept.
Yeah, and I love JFK shooting himself, and we get all the man in the grassy knoll and all that. I love all those references. I do like the episode a lot, but does it follow on correctly? I don't know.
Yeah, that's the thing.
I think if you're going to do the scrolling text of Series 3, it's a Mickey take reboot.
Yes.
In a sense. We're rebooting.
The next generation.
Everything's going to look different. You're going to have a different Holly. Crichton's going to look different to before. Move on. Here's a new series. And I actually quite like that. That almost dismissive way of doing it.
Yeah.
There is no questions.
Like 9 years later.
Yeah. There's no questions of continuity, because you're just going, bugger it, we've moved on.
Yeah, and that's Red Dwarf, right? Like, this kind of...
Not that it stops me doing theories every other week that don't make sense.
Oh, no, I mean, this is the thing, is that bad continuity is like, it's like catnip to the theory crafter, right? Like, so that the inconsistency with the plot. It's... Funnily enough, I was watching, so a bit later today we were recording our podcast on the second DVD. So we're going through all the DVDs and like a retrospective, because it's been 20 years since the DVDs came out.
Oh, you're kidding.
Believe it.
DVDs are still new. I don't accept it.
I know, yeah. Like, exactly the same. And so I was watching the Doug Naylor interview, which on that Series 2 disc just last night. And he there's a mention about continuity, and it's only Doug being interviewed. Rob wasn't part of the scene at all at that point, and he said that Rob always told me that that continuity doesn't matter, or something like that. It's one of the things that I listen to him about, and it's kind of true, as long as it's serving a purpose. Like if you're going to throw something out, make it count. Like if you're going to, you've got a situation where you've got 2 weeks before you're filming series 3 and you have to replace your Holly actor, what else can you do other than
he wanted to be here, he'd move on
quick. Yeah, he wanted to be here, he'd move on. Yeah, and accidentally become give us one of the most progressive side plots that had been in any sci-fi at that point. David Ross can't be Crichton anymore. It doesn't matter. We just have to have this other actor that's a completely different take on him, and just, I don't know, put it in some text, and it's fine. And that was so brave, because Red Dwarf was just taking off at that point, and so when it comes to when it comes to retconning the time drive, again, when you can see the mechanics of the story driving the decisions, and in this case it clearly is, I can't do anything with this time drive, but I want to use it for this JFK plot, I'll just ignore what we previously said. It just feels cheaper. It feels like unnecessary. Like it feels like something that could be fixed with better writing, maybe.
Sure. Let's whiz through Out of Time in order. So we start up the first act, if we want to call it that. We get it's more just a comical setup. We got Rimmer setting up his morale meeting where he just slags off everybody. Which, I've got to be honest, I would find that entirely satisfying if I was Rimmer as well. And I would love to do that. Who wouldn't love to do that kind of thing where you just get to let loose on people?
Well, it's like lockdown comedy, 30 years before lockdown, isn't it? It's like...
Well, it's always been the reference on the comically, also called the quarantine commentaries that Paul, Ed and Rob did. They were often referencing Steptoe and Son.
Yeah.
And Porridge, where they're in a prison cell, so it's very much locked in.
It's cabin fever, yeah. And this is like next level cabin fever, because for the whole series they've been trapped in Starbug, which isn't the size of a city at this point, and that's like a million times worse than being trapped on. I've watched a great video about really putting the context into how big Red Dwarf is.
Yeah, it's bonkers,
it's
isn't
ludicrously big. It is a city. You can't get cabin fever in a city.
Well, but if you lay the floors out, it's a country. It's bonkers.
Yeah, a country. Sorry, yes, it's just absolutely bonkers. But in Starbug is very much like you would imagine that is the size of, I don't know. I feel like a couple of double-decker buses worth of floor space, maybe, possibly more. I don't know.
I'm thinking more like an RV.
More like an RV, right? Yeah, even worse then.
Or a static caravan. That's probably the more English way of saying it.
Yeah, that's all it is. It's just a static caravan sitcom in space. So obviously, you can imagine him snapping like this, but really, it's just a great. There's an art form that isn't always done perfectly of starting a Red Dwarf episode. It really feels like a difficult thing to do, because it almost has to be disconnected slightly from the episode. It needs to ease you in, but it also needs to set things up. And all too often, you get openings to the episodes where it's just like, wait a minute, this is exactly the same as the opening. I think it might be Legion and Sirens, or the Apocalypse. There's two.
Emo Polymorph is both like an attack on the ship, isn't it? Or,
and it's like...
Sorry, they think Polymorph... they think Legion's attacking the ship, but it's not. But
it's like alert. Cat smells something. Cat says he can smell anything. Cat misses thing. Crichton says, "Could you do a there's two? It's very easy to get into a formula basically, and I think this is a really good example of just let's have a little sketch from these people's lives, because it doesn't really flow into the theme of the episode. It's just Rimmer letting loose and Chris Barry putting in one of his amazing cutting performances.
I think there's elements of the theme of the episode inverted, where it's these guys are not getting on, but then suddenly when they see a worse version of themselves, suddenly it's let's band together.
Yeah. No, that's very...
We always joke about this with our dog. They might fight all the time and hate each other, but if someone knocks on the door, we band together,
Yeah. It's like, who the hell's that?
Yeah, band together, get together and go on the fight. And I think it's something like that here. It's, there's a lot of friction going on in Starbug until they see something worse, and then it's, they've got to work together.
Yeah, boys from the dwarf.
Absolutely. Including Rimmer, bizarrely, who's the hero at the end, sort of.
Well, yeah, exactly.
Maybe.
And this is something that's, it's revisited a lot. Like, when it comes down to it, they're a crew and they're a group of friends. I think actually it's done incredibly well in Promised Land, where you really get this kind of sense of togetherness with them all. It's like, they all kind of can't really stand each other in a lot of times, but it doesn't really matter. They're still a team.
Yeah, and you even have the cat. He needs a nemesis.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. He does. Otherwise, he hasn't really got much to do.
Well, that's true. Yeah.
But the morale officer scene, like that start of that, is one of those things where we, like as a group, like at Ganymede Titan, or just in our group of friends, we paraphrase that so much. You may have noticed things have got a little strained around here of late, and like any article we write where we haven't published anything for 6 months, it's like, you may have noticed things have got a little quiet around here of late, and it's just like a mantra almost.
For me, it's Crichton with the I haven't got the software to cope with this. That's a common one for
that's
me.
Good. Yeah, that is very good.
So we get that the morale meeting, and then we're into the more typical. There's an autopilot.
We're
alert,
into the
get
cockpit,
to the cockpit.
and then the episode happens. Yeah.
They go into stellar fog, and Lister gets knocked out, and then we get the brilliant. Can we say reveal that he's an android?
Yeah.
Because it's not a reveal, but because it's.
I mean, yeah, the fake reveal, the reveal, maybe.
Which it's very hard to put yourself in your mindset of seeing something for the first time when it's been around for 20, 30 odd years. But
I remember.
Do you remember feeling,
yeah,
my goodness, is he? Is this real? This can't be real,
Yeah. Well, this is the first time that the episode kicks you in the guts, really, because you've got the reveal of, like, Mr. Lister is a mechanoid, and, like, when you're 11 years old, you take everything at face value that you get given. It's like, oh, what? Because, you're getting to, like, I thought we were getting towards the end of the season, but actually, this was the end of the series, sorry. Anything could be possible. And then the way Crichton reacts, like, the cruelty of it. Again, it's just like, no, everything's kind of. Actually, you may have got a point. Like the morale meeting, everyone's kind of starting to turn. Oh, in this case, it's Crichton's now taking out his frustrations on Lister because he's suddenly got a reason to. So, like, he needed to vent some things, before this happened. But
it's wonderfully out of context for Crichton, isn't it?
Yeah.
But also, in the history of the show, it's wonderfully in context, because if you think of Polymorph when he loses which emotion is it? His guilt. Loses his guilt, and he becomes just like this, a bit of a. I don't know how you. Well, yeah, it's not even that he's behaving. He's behaving maybe correctly, but he's doing it so harsh.
Yeah. The filters have gone.
So I think within the lore and the world of Red Dwarf, it's consistent that when Crichton lets loose, he is quite harsh.
Oh, for sure. Like, yeah, it's definitely consistent. It's maybe something that some people would criticise about characterisation, but I definitely believe it. But watching it it's not comfortable. It's not the Red Dwarf that we've been watching. It's like, no, there's something wrong here. There's something weird, and this is the feeling. This is what I love about this episode, is that it really does, like. It's almost like, no, you're picking apart this whole world. You're destroying it almost, and that's a feeling that just kind of stays in your gut the whole episode, I think.
Yeah. So we end up with the. This is why I have, of course, the Krabby's fingers. The whole thing of Lister's got to be kind of the servant on the ship, if that's the right word. Comes in with a bad tray of food and then returns again with the brilliant, and I just love the image of the log cabin made out of chocolate fingers, which still now I see that and I just think it's a fantastic visual gag. And the guys in the props department must have had such a laugh putting that together.
There's a proof if proof be need be, as the great man once said, that it doesn't matter how dramatic your episode is, doesn't matter how far down that road you want to go, there's always room for a really stupid joke.
Yeah. Absolutely.
It's, that's what it's all about.
And it does nothing to advance the plot. It's just a brilliant moment.
It's just a great. And look, how long would he have had to put that together? Like maybe about 30 seconds.
Yes, it's impossible. In fact, it's almost one of those things that for a split second you think maybe he is an android if he can do that. It's another unreality bubble. Like, who knows how many mini ones you go through? What happens if you graze an unreality bubble? Do you get? Or is it another example of Lister can be brilliant if he can be bothered to set his mind to something, or if someone's riding him and disciplining him, like Crichton is.
That's a really good point. Yeah,
because I keep meaning to put together a theory, half joking theory. Is Lister a bit of a genius? Like, he fixes his robotic fish in seconds. He builds the it's pig ugly, but he builds the Marilyn Monroe droid. How many times has he repaired Crichton? Literally cut him in half and put him back together. Is he a bit of a genius, like a robotics genius?
Well, we'll go back to Backwards, the novel, and you got Spanner's Lister's there.
Of course,
Spanner's Lister, who's just Lister, but he had a bunkmate that encouraged him.
Yeah,
and I think he's got an application problem, but I would say yes, he probably is. Like he's clearly like an incredibly intelligent man who is not even slightly driven to do anything. He's a slacker. He's the classic slacker character.
Yeah, which in the Dave era we had referenced with the captain's report. How did it put it? Quite bright.
I can't remember the full line, but it's true. It's and that's what's interesting about him, and that's why it gets a little bit tiring when it all gets kind of boiled down to, well, he just eats curry and drinks lager, and like that. That's almost like the headline of his character.
It's what separates him from Chen and Peterson.
Yeah.
Whereas they would probably be your typical lager louts with no real depth. There is depth in Lister.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
It
turns out Peterson is a real estate genius, though. Like, his investment on Titan.
No gravity, no oxygen, but worst of all, no booze.
Yes.
I literally read that page like yesterday.
It's a good one.
We get the reveal then, of course, that he's not an android, and they're in these unreality pockets, and we get the cat disappearing. They lose their heads and have like animal heads on, and then the ship disappears around them before the crew decides to go into deep sleep.
What an absolute genius idea the unreality pockets are. Like, you get drama from it, and you get this quick fire, relatively easy to do, like bottle episode style gags, and like just bang bang bang, and it's just hilarious.
Yeah,
before
totally.
It then goes back to being dramatic again. It's
I mean, you could literally sit there with a scrapbook, and anything that works on a blue screen you can do.
Yeah,
and it doesn't even have to relate to your episode. You could have the ship disappear around them, and they turn up in Del Boy and Rodney's apartment. You could have anything.
Yeah. Oh, the set of Coronation Street, perhaps.
Oh well, yeah. Hang on, that sounds familiar.
But it's one of those. It's one of those things. Red Dwarf does this all the time, where you're watching and you just go, "This idea is genius," and they have used it for 10 minutes and then thrown it away. Like the surplus of brilliant ideas that they had, and just
it's like I've heard
so quickly.
Robert Llewellyn say, like, if it was him, he'd go for the big laughs and have a groinal attachment in every episode. But the writers are so good at only bringing it in just enough that we consider a groinal attachment to be a core element of Crichton, but we've only seen it like twice, 3 times.
Can you imagine that? Like every week, it's like everyone's just waiting for the bit where the groinal attachment comes out, and then there's like this huge cheer from the audience every time he gets it out. Every week.
I mean, we've only seen it. The Hoover. Basically, it's the
Tikka
Hoover and
ride.
Polymorph, and stirring the drinks in season 7. I don't. Am I missing some? But
no, I don't think there is.
For
anyone,
something I consider so core to his character, we've only seen it like 2 or 3 times.
It's good. It's like it describes his kind of slight unawareness of human mores and matters, I guess. But yeah, you're right. Restraint. Restraint is a big thing of Red Dwarf. I think it's something that gets lost when there isn't another voice to kind of pull the other one back, if you know what I mean. Like, I think they work together very well, did Rob and Doug, and obviously, sadly, this is the last time. Not the last. Actually, technically, not the last time they worked together on a Red Dwarf
we could
episode,
count. We could
Body
count the Body
Snatcher.
Snatcher collection. Yeah.
But I've got a feeling that was like a couple of emails back and forth, and that's
I don't know. They did the writers'
the
commentary.
commentaries. Yeah,
and
they did. Yeah,
it sounds fine. There sounds no animosity.
no, yeah. Oh god, you know what? There's a brilliant book to be written about these two, maybe in about 20, 30 years.
I'll leave that to you, and you can get in trouble.
Well, I have to find out the details first. I've got to get the experts. I've got to find, like, maybe, Doug Naylor's dog or something. I'll interview his rubber plant. Get all the juicy behind the scenes details.
To be a fly on the wall.
Yes.
So we'll move on. Crichton wakes them up out of deep sleep because they've got through these unreality pockets and arrived at a derelict, which has got on it the time drive, which they then managed to install seemingly with no issues on Starbuck,
Jump cut. That's really weird, that, isn't it? That jump cut. I was thinking about that.
Am I thinking of this wrong? Do you see it? Do you see the derelict? Do you see the time drive in the derelict, or just see it installed in Starbuck?
You just see it installed in Starbuck. They're talking about it, and you never see them on the derelict, so it's clearly a production choice.
Yeah, because I'm getting mixed up with Tikka to Ride, where you do see inside
where
the
they
derelict.
go on, where they're like, "Hello, Mr. Time Drive," but here it's just bingo, and then they've got it. So like they're saving some money. They're not having another set. Don't have to redress an existing set or anything like that. But for me, like, it's always felt like, do you know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of Bill and Ted, where as soon as they know that time travel is a possibility, they can say they're going to do something, and then it's come true.
Oh,
hide the keys. Hide his dad's keys,
things falling from the staging ceiling and stuff. Yeah, I haven't seen it in a long time, but yeah.
No, yeah, well, you should. Only films that rival Back to the Future for me. But obviously it's not that, but it brings to mind that I was just like, oh, we have access to time drive, so I can just, but it isn't. It's just an interesting decision, interesting editing decision.
Fascinating now in the world of YouTube that I do so much in now. Jump cut it's become so much a part of what we're used to. Normal flowing narrative on linear TV is becoming the abnormal thing, and the normal thing is like YouTube style content where things cut hard all the time. So a jump cut doesn't jump out at us in nearly the same way as it might have done 25 years ago.
Right, yeah. I think it's a pacing thing, isn't it? It's like in the 90s, I think TV had a certain pace. I think everything's kind of sped up more and more with editing, pacing of a story and things like that. It is interesting.
I mean, there's definitely been a change in television and stuff in response to internet stuff. I don't watch a lot of television. We don't even have a TV license anymore. Many people don't, with streaming and whatnot. But there's definitely a change now where mid-90s, the annoying character was everywhere, and it was usually Chris Barry. So we had him doing Rimmer, Britass, I can't remember what it's called, the ex-footballer thing? Gary Prince. He was doing really irritating lead character a lot. We had Keeping Up Appearances, One Foot in the Grave, lots of irritating lead characters, but you had a week to get over it before you saw the next one. You weren't just popping on and binging a set. You weren't binging.
Yeah.
Whereas if you try and binge, and I've done it, me and my wife binged Britass a few years ago, it got hard. It got to the point of like, do we have to put another one on? I need a break.
Because it's like how Fawlty Towers is undeniably one of the greatest sitcoms ever made. I'll be buggered if I could watch it at all, really.
Oh, I can't do two in a row.
I can't. Yeah, it's so difficult for me. Like, I have a friend who can't watch it at all, and he knows how good it is, but he has such a low cringe tolerance, or I guess that's not really the right word, but just like he gets so stressed he can't watch Alan Partridge either. Like he just cannot.
Alan Partridge is another great example. Even Blackadder to an extent. Not lead characters that are not very nice, but you had a week to get over it. No one was binging. We didn't even have a lot of videos and DVDs.
No, yeah. If you did binge, it was the incredibly sparse VHSs you get from BBC, which was like 18 quid for 3 episodes, like for half a series.
Well, they've never got over that. If you've ever looked at, like, I mean, I'm not that into it, but like Doctor Who, they sell them like 20 quid Blu-rays with 3 episodes on out of an 18 episode series. It's BBC are harsh. BBC are they're harsh with stuff. So I think there's a big exception with this sort of hard to binge, hard to keep rewatching thing that Chris Barry was so famous for with Britas particularly. I think Red Dwarf is the massive exception, perhaps because it's an ensemble cast and you get a Lister episode and a Rimmer episode and a Cat episode. I think Red Dwarf is extremely bingeable and still is. And, it definitely is because I do it all the time and many people do.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I think, again, what it always comes down to with Red Dwarf, I think, is the variety that it has. Like, it is a sitcom, but it's not constrained into a particular thing all the time or a setting or anything like that. So you've got things like this amazing special effects to enjoy, and then you've got, there's depth to Rimmer's character as well. Like, sometimes he is a git, but to be honest, the performance is so good and the writing for him is so good, is that he is still a joy to watch, being like that, because that's just who he is. And you have such a variety of types of characters as well. So I think, it's Red Dwarf is like, it's amazing binged, but if you ever watch it like clipped for a trailer, it never looks as good as it actually is. It clips badly, but it's like, you could just devour it whole for like a whole day.
Yeah, whereas if you did Me Squared for 6 episodes in a row, suddenly it might be, I can't take any more Rimmer.
Oh yeah,
but they break it up beautifully.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
so right, we'll get back on track. So, we get the brilliant bit, and I love this bit where they go back, as we mentioned, to medieval deep space, but they haven't moved location, which we said, that's a brilliant sort of takeoff on like sci-fi's thing of mixing space and time with no explanation in most sci-fi. You just move location. So I love that they do that. Although it did, as always, and still does raise the question, if you're in medieval deep space, why not just set the computer to get you back to Earth and go into deep sleep? Yeah.
It's very true. Very true. Well, I think with Starbug, so Sirens shows us that deep sleep and Starbug is not stasis. It's like a slowing of time rather than a full...
I think Last Human said that as well. It's extremely slow time because there's the Kachansky bleeding to death, isn't there?
Yeah, there's that, and that novel actually takes off a lot from Sirens anyway, doesn't it? With Lister waking up with his massive nails and long hair and everything.
Yeah, it's been a while, but yeah.
Yeah. So there is a few things like that, like things like I guess it's a bit later on, but Twentica, it's like, they do try to explain that. Say if we stick around any longer, we're going to mess up the timelines. But like,
there could be an element of Starbug just isn't hardy enough to do a 3 million year journey, so you can't just forget Red Dwarf, let it go off in the distance. We'll just plot a course to Earth. Maybe Starbug just isn't robust enough for that.
If it was up to me, like as soon as we get onto like Wax World, I'd probably want to just set up shop there somewhere, like start a farm, like do what Lister did on Garbage World. Sure, there's a few dinosaurs.
It's his Fiji dream,
but it's
his
a bit
Fiji
like
dream, but he just doesn't have Kachansky in a white dress.
Yeah, it's his Fiji dream, but instead of being in Fiji, he's in a field behind Shepperton Studios.
Well, okay, yeah, with aeroplanes going over every 2 minutes.
Yeah, you too.
But yeah, no, I totally agree. I mean, as soon as we get too much time travel, it does start to their quest doesn't make a lot of sense. Not that it makes a lot of sense anyway, and not that it needs to.
Well, oh god, tangent after tangent, but. One of the things that I like to think about when it comes to, why isn't Lister more interested in getting back to Earth, is this kind of something that's been made explicit in the Promised Land but was implicit before, was that Red Dwarf has become his home. It's become where he feels like he belongs. The vast majority of his life is spent there. And maybe now he doesn't have any interest in pursuing Earth because he knows it's almost, it'll never happen, Red Dwarf is his home.
Well, yeah, I mean, by the time of Promised Land, it's got very skewy what's going on with the timelines and when are they. Because if Arnold Rimmer's hologram is still alive, are they still 3 million years in the future, or are they just in deep space in about the year 2300 or something? I don't know. It's very skewy.
Oh, do you mean Howard?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, so if Howard's...
Right, so there's a throwaway line in that episode that bugged me for a while as well. There's a throwaway line in that episode where the quantum entanglement that happens dragged Howard through time and space. So it dragged Howard over to them from where he was in time.
I got drawing together his brother, but I didn't realise it was drawing it together through time. Okay. There's a theory video I'll have to do next time.
Yeah. Keep writing these down. Yeah.
I'll add it to my massive list of stuff that I'll never get around to making.
Same.
I was literally in the middle of making one this morning for Legion, but anyway, we'll move on. So they make contact with the future crew from was it 15 years in the future?
15 years. Yeah.
It's a big change in 15 years, but we'll get to that.
I was going to say.
And Crichton has no poker face when he comes in from the cockpit. No poker face. I'd hate you to go anywhere without knowing that.
Yeah, shades of Series 7 Crichton starting to trickle in there with the "you're lying" and all the
the jealous girlfriend Crichton.
Yes, basically.
Yeah. So the future crew are from 15 years' time, and they need a few settings from Starbug's time drive. And we get a nice, I wouldn't say tender, but an interesting conversation with Crichton and Dave in the galley, where it's like, there is a Dave on board, there are 4 crew members, and that's all I can say, but don't use up all the chilies, there'll be none left for tomorrow. So we get some nice little, he's making him his last meal. It's like he's going to an execution, even though there's 15 years.
He's just got no subtlety at all, does he?
No, but I think that's really working for Crichton. And there's still, of course, that guilt lingering from treating him like a slave earlier in the episode.
Crichton's also having to deal with the fact that, he's just seen his future self as well. And he has got, a part organic, part human sort of a brain. So Crichton must be, must be difficult for him to be, dealing with the future selves. Although, he's not immune to...
Yeah, but as we'll get to, his future self, in appearance... is funny, but he's not injured, he's not bald, he's not fat, he's not anything like that. He's just got a funny toupee on and some eyebrows. It's the eyebrows that I think are funnier than the toupee, personally.
So Ian Symes, my good friend and the founder of Ganymede Titan, way back in God knows when, 2002. He one of his big things is Crichton with things on his face, like anything at all, and he loses it completely. Like it's in Back to Earth, and Crichton's got his disguise on. It's just
big,
it just increases
round glasses and stuff.
And this with the toupee and the eyebrows, it's like just put something on Crichton's face. It's immediately hilarious.
Crichton is extremely interesting. I mean, the makeup is extremely interesting to still have enough of Robert Llewellyn and still having look like a robot, but without going into Uncanny Valley and making it frightening. That must be such a hard thing to get right.
So much of that comes down to his performance, Robert's performance as well. Like, he's so good at the amount of work he has to do with his face. I think he mentions it in his book, Man in the Rubber Mask, that he's just really gurning under that face just to get some expression through. And there's not many actors that could do that.
Yeah,
very well, particularly.
Yeah, definitely. I haven't actually read that, but I do have it on my list of things to do.
Oh, it's very good. It's very good. Make sure you're reading the up-to-date version that goes up to Series 10.
There's a hysterical review, though, I found on the Amazon page. I was going to include it in my recent video looking at merch. Someone had put the most scathing review. It's like, an overpaid middle-class so-and-so just slagging off his neighbour, Jeremy Clarkson, and someone who obviously hated Robert Llewellyn, probably written by Jeremy Clarkson.
I was going to say, was it written by Chris Barry?
Mr. J. Clarkson, or, C. Barry. I didn't actually... Yeah, I don't know. But anyway, I will get around to reading it eventually.
Yeah, it's really good because it's... it starts really far back. Like, it's Series 5, Red Dwarf USA. It's all stories you won't have seen anywhere else, basically. It's very, very good.
Yeah, so we've got great acting in the galley as he's making the last meal, and then of course we get the everybody's shifted off to the bunk room, but they use a medi scanner to watch what's going on, and the future crew arrive, and we get some great visual jokes, which are we've got a fat rimmer, a balding cat, a ridiculous toupee and suits for Crichton, and of course Lister is a brain in a jar.
Lister's a burning
Which
jar, yeah.
I love the touch that the water for the jar looks manky, because I just think that suits Dave.
Yeah, he hasn't been de-algaed recently, has he?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's just supposed to be formaldehyde, which is a bit yellow, but it just looks manky, which just suits him, I think.
Yeah, and also I love the dreads on it as well.
Yeah,
like,
they've stuck them on
nice
the top.
touch. Yeah, you don't want to lose your sense of personality. You need to know it's Lister.
I'm always surprised they didn't just turn him in. Maybe they just don't have a spare light bee, but they didn't just make him a hologram.
Well, yeah, I think that just kind of that gives you a you have to figure out that backstory, don't you? Like, did he prefer, like you were saying to me, would you be a soft light hologram, or would you be a holly? Like, would you be a soft light hologram, or would you still have a physical presence and be alive through your brain, even if it's only your brain? So, a bit of a philosophical question.
Maybe they've kept his love spuds somewhere so that he can perhaps still continue the human race.
Do you know what? Yes, and also they can only generate one hologram, so.
Yeah, so he's actually doing the right thing and not killing Rimmer.
And not killing Rimmer, yeah.
So they come in, and we get of course, the conversation of them being basically terrible. They're hanging out with the Hitlers and the Goerings and eating, like, what was it, seal stuff that's like endangered species food and stuff. They've been terrible people.
Hearts. Yeah, awful. It is like, I guess I'm going back to what I said before. Like, looking at it now, it really is almost like an exaggeration of, someone you really idolized when they were young. They were, maybe very forthright, and then you see them get older and sell out. It's almost that, isn't it? It's like, that's disappointing.
That's probably a good way of putting it, as selling out.
Yeah, selling out, but it to an extreme degree.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because they haven't necessarily done bad things themselves. They're not, I've gone and become Hitler, but it's still bad enough. It's still bad enough for their characters.
Yeah, it represents the fact that they've had to. I mean, I guess the cat doesn't have, like, the cat's not really betrayed himself, to be honest, because the cat is the cat, and he wouldn't give a damn who Hitler was, and really even like. It's established he's a psychopath. He probably doesn't care. But for Crichton and Lister to do that, I think, is the big betrayal. I
can understand Rimmer if he was trying to climb the greasy pole, as it were.
I mean, yeah, he wanted Napoleon's autograph, so.
Yeah, that one's not. But I wouldn't say that's as clear cut as.
No, yeah, I was going to say he's not. Yeah. Yeah.
So they're bad people, and then we get the main Starboat crew, the present day Starboat crew, coming down the stairs with bazookoids in hand to drive off their future selves. The future selves sort of say, you're destined to become us, before going off, and we get a little short space battle where everybody gets killed except Rimmer, who runs off to shoot the time drive, and we never quite know if he shot the time drive before the missile hit the ship or not.
Isn't this just
if the
perfect?
Or if the ship that got hit by a missile, we never actually know if that's the present one or the 15 years in the future one.
Exactly.
It's going to be the present one.
It's immaculate, though, isn't it? I mean, you have the crew making the decision to break out and just tell their future selves to go away. Like, they don't want anything to do with them, even if it means, killing their future selves. Like, so right now we're getting our current crew galvanizing and being the characters we want them to be. The bit in the cockpit, the better dead than Smeg conversation is just like punch the air, like, yes. And then, like you say, the ambiguity of the cliffhanger, obviously all of that is deliberate. Like, what quite happened there. Obviously there is an alternate ending, which I'm assuming we'll touch on. But did Rimmer? I like to think Rimmer did shoot it. But it's almost like Han and Greedo, right?
Surely it's
They
irrelevant.
both shot each other at once.
Yeah, but it's almost irrelevant if he shot it or not. If the starboat gets destroyed, it takes out the time drive with it, surely.
Oh, yeah, that's very true.
So there is an
the
irrelevance.
important thing here is that Rimmer was going to, and he had his heroic moment in the face of, like, just seeing his entire crew get killed. And he did it. And, like, Rimmer having a heroic moment is something... It happens a couple of times. It's always an exciting moment because it is, it's indicative of all the crew coming together, despite all their differences, despite the fact that Rimmer really isn't a particularly nice person, but he, he's got his crew, and he's trying to just do something, and he's brave in that moment.
It's good enough for me.
Yeah. And so what a cliffhanger! Like, honestly,
so tell us the
back then
alternative ending, because I've forgotten, so plenty of viewers won't remember either.
It has kind of got forgotten. It was first seen in '94 they released the Smeg-Ups tape, and I love it. That's why I was very quick to answer your question before. Like Smeg-Ups, the outtakes were so good, and they included basically a DVD extra before there was DVDs. So at the end of the tape, it was the original ending of Out of Time, and in this ending, so they slightly tweak what happened with it. I don't think there's a bolt anymore that blows up the ship. I think it's just Rimmer shoots the drive, a Starbug blows up, which I think we're led to believe is the future Starbug, and then there's a scene after that where everyone's gathering around the table and like, oh, Mr. Rimmer did it. By destroying the timeline, the time drive, he defeated the future selves, and everything has reknitted, and like hand wave. Like, let's celebrate with this wine, and they all have a gulp, and they've all got mustaches left on because it's the Urine Recyc callback, and it's a funny curio. But it's just not. It's not the ending. You can tell, like.
The way you've described it, though, I almost like that more. But maybe that's just because it's unfamiliar and new. But
it can be nice. Yeah, it can be nice to like. I mean, Series 8 has exactly the same thing. They had.
Oh, I know that one because that's more obvious.
I feel like it's giving them options in the edit. Maybe also the trick of like filming some fake endings that they don't really ever intend to do, because it is just a little conversation in the drive room. You could do it in a few hours, so it wouldn't have been. It's interesting that it exists, but I don't think it was ever close to being the ending that they wanted to go with. But yeah, it's fascinating because you basically got three endings to this episode. You got the one that we got. You've got this alternate one, then you've got the one that Rob wrote last year.
Yeah, now that's really interesting, and I've just closed the laptop and I'll have to log in again. But yeah, we have Into the Gloop. So for those who don't know, Into the Gloop was an extra script written for Hollyhop online convention in 2021 when we were still in lockdown. Couldn't have Dimension Jump proper convention, so it was an online version. And for that, Rob wrote an extra script, just like a 10-minuter, which goes on the very end. It's almost series 6, episode 6.5. It just goes just on the end.
Yeah.
Little 10-minuter. And he wrote it apparently overnight because they didn't know who the actors were going to be, and there was a lot of women and a young lad. So he had to write it to fit the guys had chosen to be actors for it, to read the lines online. I actually personally found it a lot easier to follow, actually, just reading the script, because the script is out there online for everybody. But there's a really interesting couple of lines. So it's Lister at the very end. I apologise, I can't remember if at this point it's a female Lister or a male. I can't remember. Probably still female. So Lister says something like along the lines of, so this is it, but only for us. Somewhere out there's another us in a better reality, surfing the star waves, hungry for adventure. Sure, they're not exactly us, but they're almost the same. The cat responds, no way they're as cool. Lister again, no way they're as cool, no way as good, but they've got almost our memories, and they'll find fun, adventure, and maybe even love. It's not the end for Red Dwarf Posse, not even nearly the end. So
yeah, it's hell of a statement, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, could it be prophetic? I mean, if it ends up being that Rob writes again, that could be a hugely prophetic statement telling us what's going to happen. I mean, finding love is interesting.
Yeah, he's not shy about his intentions, is he? Like, there's a classic line of he wants Red Dwarf flying out of his buttski. Like he would want to do novels, he'd want to do radio. Like, it sounds like they want to do everything because they obviously like money and they like Red Dwarf. So it would make sense for this new look Grand Naylor Productions to want to be doing stuff. Obviously, that's got a hard stop in it at the moment because no one can do anything while the legal proceedings are happening. But it's nice to know that Rob does want to do something, but it's also there's a conflict conflicting feeling amongst the fans that, like, yeah, but Doug's kind of been the guy for the last 20 years, and like,
absolutely, he's held the reins for ages on this.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. We'll see what the future holds. But in terms of in terms of Out of Time, that little 10-minute thing following on, what did you think?
Well, I love the concept. Again, I think it's cheeky as hell. Like, can you imagine Doug watching that? He'd be like, anyway. But I really like the concept because, from memory, the concept is that when the time drive was destroyed, almost like billions of alternate universes, like, just all got created at once, right? Like, and then they very quickly atrophied and died, like the one we witnessed, where the characters are all shifting actors, they're all shifting, who they are, but they're still the characters. And then eventually everyone turns into Gloop because that universe has been wiped out. So the idea is that there's a Series 7 universe, and that exists, and then there's Rob's universe, and then there's maybe the Uran Recycle universe, and I really like that. I really like the script. I really like the idea of getting fans cast into it. A lot of people didn't like that, unsurprisingly, because it is it is a risky thing to do. But I thought all the actors were really good, really funny, really up for it. It's not a world beater. You're not going to rewatch it every night.
No, I think I found it hard to watch just because of the latency and the delays that you're going to get on a Zoom call.
Yeah,
which is why I preferred to read it.
Yeah, definitely, it's definitely better to read. Yeah, I can't remember the actor's name, but the Crichton, the girl who played Crichton, was so good in that. It's it is weird that it's kind of almost like it's gone off into the ether. Like, a lot of people won't be able to see it, but honestly, reading the script, I think is it's decent. It's got some good gags. You can tell he wrote it in a night. You can tell he wrote it quickly.
I like the Rob-isms, if we can call it that. Like the things like the I can't remember the exact lines, but all of the funny comparisons.
His Blackadder-y sort of style. He's got, So his similes and stuff.
But I found that an interesting one where we get this sort of in between Series 6, Episode 6, and Series 7, Episode 1. We get a nice in between that wraps it up in a different way. That destroying the time drive actually would destroy one reality at least. And something's got to happen to them. Do they just disappear out of existence or go in a funny way?
Or like the paradox that was created, not just destroying the time drive, but destroying the time drive in the situation where there was two sets of the same characters, has just caused chaos. And that basically just means that if Rob comes out in a year's time with a novel, it doesn't have to explain anything. It can just be they're on Red Dwarf, they're in space, and this is the novel. Or if the new series or a special comes out that Rob is doing rather than Doug, again, it can just be
different reality.
You don't have to explain.
Ignore everything.
Different reality.
We're going on from Series 6.
Some would argue the first time Red Dwarf did this different reality was Series 3. Like, we're conditioned to accept this multiple continuities. We've got the books, we've got the comics and the magazines. If you've been reading if you've bothered to read those, you've got the TV series, and I would argue the TV series holds a couple of different. Like, you could arguably say Series 3 is a slightly different universe.
And if you're brave, you can include again. USA. So I think we've well covered Out of Time.
Everything, haven't we?
I think we have. Show. It's a brilliant one. I mean, the gags in there, you can watch it on different levels, which I think is one of the reasons it's such a powerful episode, is it's got great gags, visual and verbal gags. You've got a whole thing of, so much depth. We've gone into like an hour's worth of depth stuff on it. There's so many layers you can look at, and where it takes the show is really fascinating. If it takes it into, perhaps from Rob's point of view, it takes it into an ending, or if you take it into a whole new direction, it's absolutely fascinating.
Yeah. I think it's what's interesting about it is that you can't have an episode like this without having to rebuild afterwards. Like, it basically does just take a hammer to the whole thing and requires you to rebuild things in the next episode. And how that gets done is already happened in various different ways. Is still a question that could be answered today. Like,
you could almost do it
later.
I mean, if it was me, I'd just take the easy way out, and you just have it The time drive gets destroyed, everything gets reset, but the original time drive on the derelict also explodes. Then you're done. Then it never happens.
Got it,
you know. I just take the easy way out.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Red Dwarf has done that many times. If that means a straighter, more simple path back to a good situation where they can get good comedy, which is really what it's all about in the end.
Absolutely, that's what it's about. And yeah, it's a great episode. I wouldn't call it my favourite. As I said earlier, maybe Queeg, maybe White Hole, Dimension Jump. You know, I could, but it's definitely
any day, right?
But actually, to be honest, by the end of this conversation, I'm going, is this one of my favourites? Maybe so.
Yeah. Well, and if we to go back to what we were saying about what the hipster choice is, I realise now what the hipster choice is. It's Thanks for the Memory.
Thanks for the memory. Do you think?
Thanks for the Memory.
I think there is strong elements in there, though.
An old friend of mine, who many will know, Seb Patrick, who sadly died a couple of years ago. He got me when we were living together. He got me to reappraise Thanks for the Memory. He had a big Thanks for the Memory love. He likes metafiction. He likes circular time, and the whole mystic time stuff. He really loved, and he evangelized it a great deal. Wrote many articles on his website and then on G&T later when he was part of Ganymede Titan for a short while. And he's really lifted the status of that episode up, I think, in certain parts of the community. And anyone who knows Seb will know why I'm saying it's basically the hipster. The hipster's favourite episode because, yeah.
It's very in right now as well, I suppose, with the whole meta thing.
Yeah, I think so. And again, it's just another, Rob and Doug were so ahead of their time in a lot of ways, maybe sometimes accidentally, but it's a really cool...
Well, this is part of the thing of having... Holly originally being a voice only, and did people understand, and do people get the idea of an AI? They totally understand it now.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
An intelligent computer that talks to you needs no setup now.
Yeah.
None at all.
Exactly. And I mean, it's not like Red Dwarf was the only sci-fi in the 90s, but I would say people of a similar age to me and you, I missed Doctor Who. I didn't have a Doctor Who put in front of me, therefore I didn't really watch it when I was a kid. But I had Red Dwarf there, and this was my sci-fi education. And I think that's true for a lot of people. It was almost holding the British sci-fi torch for on its own for quite a long time.
Yeah, I mean, I was slightly into Trek, because there was so much Trek in the 90s.
Yeah,
there was 3 different shows at once, 4 different shows at once.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of Trek around. But yeah, in terms of anything British, anything European, it's probably the only thing at the time.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, great episode. I really enjoyed it. Been a great chat. Really enjoyed this. Got so many tangents. Really so yeah, no, been a great episode. Really enjoyed talking about this. Hope to have you on again. And I've got some other guys who hopefully I'm going to be getting on soon if people ever answer my emails. Lamb, answer the email. So hopefully we should be doing similar things to this in the future. If you've enjoyed this and you want to see more, let me know in the comments below and give us a thumbs up if you've enjoyed, just so I know that you all love me so much. We've got to give a massive thanks to Cappsy here. Huge thanks. Everyone, go to Ganymede Titan, read as many articles as you can, listen to the podcasts, everything we can do to promote and bring up Red Dwarf, give Red Dwarf the biggest social media presence possible. The more social media presence, I think, the more chance it's got of another series in the future, and we keep Red Dwarf alive. So guys, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Cappsy, see you next time. Thanks everyone for watching. Bye, Smegheads.
Bye everyone.